And all we know that, I don't say this in order to be anti-Eurocentric, which is also a very an exhausted and tired theme. Nevertheless, we know that all the concept, the axioms, and the languages of the human rights are tied to national idioms. Today, the international law and the texts which rule the international institutions are Western texts, Western discourses, linked not simply to a European nation, but to Europe as such. And Europe today is also the United States, maybe Japan too, and so on and so forth. So we try to analyze what this link between philosophy and nationality and nationalism is, without simply criticizing the affirmation or the desire for difference, for one's idiom, one's language, one's group, and so on and so forth. But how is it possible to reaffirm singularity, minority, specific idioms, natural languages, without giving rise to what we call nationalism in its violent and imperialistic forms? And what philosophy, or thinking, I would prefer to say thinking than philosophy, what a new way of thinking should be in order to reaffirm differences or singularities in terms of language, tradition, and so on and so forth, memories. Reaffirming this without falling into nationalism. Is that possible? And it is difficult. It is difficult if one doesn't want to simply dissolve the idioms or the differences, the singularities within a universal, empty, formal language, which, as we know, is always pretending to be universal, always under the authority of an hegemonic state, language, group of states. For instance, I don't want to hurt you here, but of course the English language is today hegemonic, not only because a Frenchman has to speak English in England, but when I lecture in Moscow, I have to speak English. I communicate in English, in my English, so to speak, with Russians or with sometimes Germans. So we know that today the English language is not simply replacing all the languages on earth, but being the second universal language. Everyone has to speak his own language plus English. I don't think it's simply bad. It is very useful and better than nothing, of course. It helps. It helps. But we have to be conscious of the fact that this universal translator, which is the English language, imports or conveys with it some national hegemony, not England's hegemony, as you know, but mainly American hegemony. But I'm not simply against that. We don't have to be simply against, because it has very positive aspects. But we have to be careful to be vigilant. And it's a task which has constantly to be redefined, because thanks to this universal idiom, communication is made possible, especially in scientific and political discourse. So it's a positive aspect, but this positive aspect has also its negative implications. So that's why it's not easy to be simply against nationalism. Of course, it's easy to be against the most violent imperialistic forms of nationalism. This is very easy. I mean, easy, I hope, among us. But as soon as I say I have a language, I speak my own language, and I don't want to give up French, for instance. And it's already a form of affirming a subtle nationalism. Being nationalistic, since it's not a description, when I say I speak French, it's not simply a constative utterance. It's not simply a description. It's a way of committing myself. I say, well, I confirm it is good for me to speak French, and I prefer to speak French than English or than algebraic Esperanto. So in that case, as soon as you reaffirm your own language, your own idiom, and as soon as a poet speaks his own language or her own language, there is the beginning of some nationalistic affirmation, something which is not simply content with describing a situation, but trying to commit oneself, to affirm, to say it's good, to sign or to countersign. So you have, this is an aporia, and there is no political decision without going through an aporia. This is an aporia. I have to reaffirm my difference and to respect the other's difference without, of course, giving rise to what we call bad forms of nationalism, that is aggressivity, xenophobia, exclusion of the other. So when you show some respect for the other, you have to respect his or her own language and to affirm yours. And that's the experience, the deep experience of translation, which is not only a political but a poetic problem. Thank you.